Good day, everyone. First of all, thank you for taking some time to attend our virtual book launch and brown bag session. Most importantly, we hope for each and every one of you here today to gain new knowledge and some insights. Do stay till the end as we have prize giveaway to two most active participants throughout. We have two speakers with us today, and they are what we could say pioneer in the project management field. The first will be the author himself, Mr. Jailani Mustafa. A fun fact about him, he is actually an accidental entrepreneur from being a consultant in one of the top firms for over 15 years before deciding to having his own company in 2007 due to his passion for project management. He has a clear vision in the hope for his project management solution to help ordinary people do extraordinary things. We also have here today with us one guest speaker who is also an amazing individual in the project management field. Had a varied career from government roles to consulting and then a publishing house, Mr. Raja Thuraisingham. With 26 years experience with Accenture, one of the leading consulting firms, Mr. Raja is specialized in large complex IT projects. He is also a mentor to Mr. Jailani Mustafa himself. So a big warm welcome to both of them. Thank you for being here today. Before we proceed with our session, please take a look at the screen for the prize giveaway slide. We will be announcing the winner via our social media. Okay, so let's hear it now from our guest speaker for today, Mr. Raja, who will be sharing with us on why do projects fail. Mr. Raja, over to you.
Can everybody hear me now?
It's not so clear, Mr. Raja. Maybe if you can speak louder.
Can you all hear me now?
Yeah, can Raja.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Raja, as the presenter said. I'm going to spend a short time talking to you about one example of why it's so difficult to manage a project well and prevent it from failing. And the example I'm going to use is actually a real example. However, I have, of course, changed the example to preserve confidentiality. So I think, as all of you know, large complex projects, when they are started, they usually come with a large set of specifications that tell the people managing the project what the project owner wants them to do. So usually these are called project specifications or program specifications, and they could be a very large document, 100 pages, 150 pages, 200 pages. And basically these documents are used in the selection process to select the people who are going to manage the project. So anyway, all these complex projects have these set of specifications, and eventually the person who wins the right to implement the project takes these specifications and tries to deliver every single feature and function in those specifications, so that you all know. The example I'm going to talk about is where, even though a project team may take those specifications and deliver every single thing in the specifications, sometimes the customer may not still be satisfied. Now, why is that? You were asked to deliver a set of specifications. You delivered 100% of those specifications, but yet the customer is not very happy. And so this is one of the difficulties of project management, and this is the point that I want to spend a little bit of time talking about. Now, the reason why, even though you deliver 100% of all the specifications that the client has put in the contract, the client may not be happy, is because there may be some hidden expectations that the client has that they haven't actually put in the specifications. And usually these hidden expectations are related to the why question, what I call the why question. And the reason why this is so important is because frequently people who commission a project, the project owner, they may tell you what they want you to do, but they may not tell you why they want you to do it. And you may think, okay, why do I need to know why they want something? All I need to know is what they want, and I deliver that, and they should be happy, right? However, in real life, it doesn't work that way. And frequently, even though they have not stated the reason why they want something, that reason actually has a significant effect on whether they consider the project is a success or failure. And we're going to give you an example now to illustrate this point, because what I've just talked about is theory. So what I want to do now is give you a real example. Several years ago, a very large oil company that had operations all over the world, they decided that they wanted to hire somebody to design and implement a new global financial system. So what they did, and this is a very sophisticated, well-known company, what they did is that they got their financial people together, and these people spent about 6 months creating a project specification. The project specification was about 150 pages long, and it contained a great amount of detail as to what the project management team was supposed to. So it had things like functions, features. For example, it said the new system must be able to handle multiple countries, multiple languages, multiple currencies. They need to be able to consolidate across countries. They need to be able to consolidate across types of businesses. And these 150 pages are very, very detailed. So if you are an inexperienced project manager, you would say, okay, great. All I need to do to be successful is to take this specification and just deliver 100% of what's in these specifications. However, if you are a good project management person or a more experienced one, you wouldn't stop there, but you would ask questions as to why they needed something. And so that's what our team did. Even though the customer was a little bit irritated, they said, look, why are you asking us all these? Everything is in the specifications we've already provided you. You just go and deliver what's in those 150 pages and we'll be happy. But our boss at the time, who was a very smart and very experienced project manager, he said, I can't do this project unless you answer some questions. So he kept asking the questions, why do you need this function and feature? Why do you need that? And so he kept probing into the why they required something. And eventually, after a few weeks of very detailed questioning, it emerged that the real reason why this company wanted to implement a new financial system was because the old financial system was taking too long to close. So the old financial system, after the end of the month, it took 1.5 months after the month end for them to be able to consolidate and close their books and find out how they were doing. So basically, if you think about this, that particular company was running blind for 1.5 months. So after the month end close, they didn't get their financial statements for 1.5 months. So they thought this was ridiculous, and they wanted a new system that was able to close their books in a very short period of a week. And the interesting thing is that this requirement, which in fact was the most important requirement, was not in that 150 pages. So if we had not asked these questions and probed the why, we wouldn't have known that that was the main thing they were going to use to determine whether the project was successful. So because we understood now why they wanted a new system, and we looked into the why question, we were able to focus the entire project on making sure that their new global financial system was able to close quickly. So this is an example of why it's always important to ask the question, why do you need something? So an experienced project manager just doesn't try to find out what is required to be done. They, of course, try to understand what the customer wants, but they also try to understand why the customer wants that. So that's my example, and if any of you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Farrah to Failure is not a textbook. It is not a project management 101 book either. It is a practical guide that can help organizations achieve their strategic plans by adopting digital project management. This book also provides tips and techniques on how you can deliver your projects without considering your work-life balance. My name is Jailani Mustafa. I'm the author of Farrah to Failure. I wrote this book based on my experience conducting trainings and managing projects for various industries around the world for almost 30 years. I have two groups of people in mind when I wrote this book. The first group are the leaders of organizations that are responsible for developing and delivering their strategic plans. I observe that many organizations have great strategic blueprints and plans but are not able to realize them. The second group are the people who are involved in projects. I see all too many who get bogged down in tedious admin work. Their projects are plugged with cumbersome manual processes that are inefficient and ineffective. They spend hours upon hours in meetings and working until late at night. DPM will enable you and your team to work smart. This method is not new, but few organizations could implement them successfully. This book will show you how to get it right once and for all. In chapter 1, I talk about the vision and execution disconnect that is common in many organizations. I also introduce the Vision to Action Framework, or V2A. This framework explains how an organization can align their vision and strategy plans. In chapter 2, I talk about the importance of execution, of which project management plays a critical role. Chapter 3 details the characteristics of a great project, or what is referred to as Type A projects in the book. Chapter 3 also defines the attributes of a good project manager. In chapter 4, I discuss the leading project management methodologies, which include the frequently talked about agile methodology. In chapter 5, I explain the benefits of DPM. I also elaborate on the concept of Digital Project Workspace, or DPW, and its key features. In chapter 6, I share some of the best practices in DPM that will help you run your project smoothly. I believe it is important for you and your team to maintain a work-life balance even while undertaking mission-critical projects. In the final chapter, I present 2 case studies that I believe will convince you to adopt DPM in your projects and organization. Hopefully, after reading this book, you can take on any projects and say farewell to failure with confidence. This is Jailani Mustafa, the author of Farrah to Failure.
Ladies and gentlemen, introducing Mr. Jailani Mustafa, the author of Farewell to Failure, a practical guide to digital project management book. Congratulations on the birth of the book, Mr. Jailani. Also, thank you, Mr. Raja, for an insightful sharing session earlier. So to all participants, kindly send in your questions via the Q&A icon on your screen. We'll be answering some of your questions towards the end. Do make it interesting. I will now invite Mr. Jailani to share with us about his book.
Okay, thank you, Farrah, for the introduction. Thank you, Raja, for taking the time. Raja has been working with Raja back in Accenture, and I've always learned so much things from him. And Raja has also gave me a lot of advice in when I was writing this book. So so I will always look forward to learn from him. Before I comment on the book, I should also probably comment on the video, because a lot of people say, why you look so serious in the video? I think I was serious because of the two reasons I mentioned. One is I see a lot of organizations that spend a lot of time. They engage some of the best consultants to help them with their strategy, their blueprint. And I like a lot of that because I work with many of those organizations, governments, institutions, developmental agencies. They have great ideas, but unfortunately, many of those ideas did not end up into outcome. And as many of the research has shown, which is I shared some of that in the book. Many of those failures are due to the lack of project management. So this is why I get very emotional about it, because I feel a lot of the stakeholders could have benefited from those initiatives if they were a bit more serious about establishing a better rigor in the monitoring of the implementation of their strategies. Of course, I also get very emotional as well when it comes to for people who are involved in projects, because a lot of them work very hard. They work late at nights and so on, right? I mean, but when you look at really the reason why they are doing that, most of the case is because of bad project management processes. I mean, everything is done manually. They prepare their status report manually. I mean, everything is manual, right? So because of that, they have to compensate for those poorly designed processes by spending more time. So which why digital project management is really a enabler to help take those unnecessary inefficient process out of the project. Okay, so let me just now get into the book itself. I know some of you probably have purchased the book. Thank you very much, and probably some have already read it. I got a number of comments from people who has read it and already given me feedback, so appreciate those feedback. I like to basically touch the two points in the book, but there's so many topics in there. The first one, I talk about the three types of project. By the way, in the book, I use a lot of the metaphor in the aviation industry. I use the control tower metaphor to denote the role of the PMO. I use the metaphor of a cockpit to denote the project at the execution level. And I also use the type of flights to reflect the three types of projects. So the first project type is what I call a smooth delivery. Just imagine you are taking off, you're flying, and then the flight depart on time. There's no turbulence. It was very smooth. You landed. Everything was on time. You get through the immigration smoothly, and you get to your destination smoothly. So there is what we call a smooth delivery type projects, and I've experienced many of those projects, and it was really great. So nobody really have to work like crazy or canceling their weekend, canceling their vacation and so on. It was a smooth project. The second type is also the metaphor of a flight where the plane does get on time. I mean, the plane does reach the destination, right? It may be delayed, maybe half an hour delayed, 1 hour delayed, and maybe you have a lot of turbulence during the flight, but you end up reaching your destination. So by definition, the project is delivered, or the plane did land. However, the whole experience of that journey is not a very good one, right? And you can relate this to project as well, because we go into projects and then we have issues with with so much reports to do. We end up in meetings. We were late at nights, and sometimes some people say that my children don't even recognize me anymore because I'm hardly around. So this is also, although in many of the research call this successful, but from our point of view, I don't consider this as successful projects, because it's not just about getting the job done, right? We also want to make sure the project team have a good experience. Of course, the third metaphor, I use the word crash and burn. Of course, God forbid that it will happen, but in the real plain situation, of course, in the case of projects, it happens a lot. I mean, projects, in fact, many of the projects that I'm dealing with right now, I can foresee that they're going to go into crash and burn. So these are the three scenarios that can happen to any projects. But here, the idea of this book is really trying to get everyone to focus on type A, which is how to achieve a smooth delivery projects. So it's not just about getting the project done on time, but also making sure that the project team had a very good experience in the process. Okay, so you can, I talk a bit more about, a lot actually, in the book about how to actually get a type A project. There's a whole chapter for it. Okay, the next topic that I want to talk about, I did mention that, although I said that the book is really meant for senior executive who wants to execute their vision and mission, their strategy plans, and which is the first few chapters are relevant for them, and also addressing the people who are involved in projects, or the project manager, which is towards the later chapter. But this book can also have some tips or techniques that can be applied even on the day-to-day work as well. I mean, you don't even have to be projects to apply some of these practices. One of them is document management. So on chapter 6, it's everything in chapter 6. There's about 16 topics on some of the best practices. I'm sure there are others out there, but there's at least I've mentioned about 16 of them. And page 187, I specifically talk about document management best practice. There are two types of, I mean, some people, I mean, one of the things about this book is it talks about some very strategic things about strategy, vision, mission, but it also talks about some very petty things as well. People might say, why you talk about document management? Why you talk about meeting management? Why's a big deal? I mean, the document management, for example, in this case, why I highlighted this in this book, because, for example, in projects, we deal a lot with documents. We share documents. We want to get updates. For example, we prepare status report, right? So a lot of people need to contribute to the development of the status report. And the problem is sometimes people use email to share these reports. So they prepare the draft, they send to their colleagues, and then their colleagues update them. And then what happened, they then download the file and they rename the file, and then they put their initials, sometimes they put a date where they make changes. So then they send it back to you, right? Okay, so this is, so when a person, when you start doing this, trying to reconcile the different changes itself can be very time consuming. And I see that happening a lot, not only for small projects, even for large scale projects in big organizations. So, I mean, I have this experience. Even, I mean, you can you imagine after you send out, an email with attachment to say 3, 4 people, all of them will come back with different version because they rename the file, because it's no longer the same file, right? Because they put their names in their file name, they put their dates, and you have to figure out how to actually reconcile the changes. That can take hours. Just try to reconcile the changes. So that's why in the book we talk about don't send the physical file. In fact, in the project that I run, I make it almost like a crime to send a file with attachment because of the reason that it can lead to this unproductive time. But it can also lead to miscommunication. I remember that I've even for a project that we were involved in a couple of weeks ago, one of the team members physically sent the file to the client. Okay, and then after that happened, we made changes. We continued to edit the file because there's new updates. So what happened? She actually took the version that was emailed to her, and then she presented it. And then we said, why did you present that? Because that is the file you gave me. So this, you can see that, and of course that file, the version that she presented was not the right one. So there's a lot of factual mistakes in there. And because of that, we look very, very silly because she presented something that is not latest, and there's a lot of mistakes. And this can be avoided when we just if we have sent her the link and insist that always get the latest version by clicking that link, we will not have the different version of truth. So this will always ensure that whoever refer to the file, they always get the latest version. So this is this practice not only can be adopted in projects, but you can also use it for the day-to-day non-project environment as well. Nowadays, many of the softwares obviously Microsoft 365 has co-authoring features. I believe Google also have that. So use that. Please always ensure that every file is co-authored, and do not send the files over the emails. Do not rename the file, and always ensure that there's always one file at any time throughout the whole project or organizations. So that is one of the 16 topics on best practices that we talk about in the book. Of course, there are also some discussion in issue management, risk management, scope management, quality management, so on that is in the book. So please get a copy, go through them. Again, as I mentioned, a lot of those practices can also be applied in the day-to-day situation as well. Okay, so that's all I have. I would love to talk about all the other stuff in the book, but I think, but if I were to do that, nobody will buy the book, right? So please get a copy of the book, and I also love to hear some feedback from you. You can email me, give your comments, so that we can improve when we publish the next version. Okay, thank you very much, and then Farrah, back to you.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Jailani. So before we open up to our Q&A session, this is another reminder on our prize giveaway. Kindly look at your screen. We'll be announcing the winner via our social media. So stay tuned for that in the next few days. So let's move on. I have some questions with me. So between Encik Joy and Mr. Raja, it's up to you, yeah? So the first question, will and how AI...
Wait. I think it's not over, right? I think there's some lag. I think you have to wait a bit, Farrah.
Oh, is it? It's lagging, yeah?
Yeah.
To some, all right. So if they can still hear, maybe I can just proceed first with the question.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So the first question, will and how artificial intelligence AI may affect DPM, digital project management? So who would want to answer this? This is coming from Abu Bakar Chekman.
Okay. Raja, you want to take that question, or you want me to answer that because it's about digital project management?
You can go ahead, Jailani. I will add something.
Okay. Artificial intelligence relies heavily on big data, right? Because of a lot of the news, the artificial, so the more data that you have, the better is your model, and based on that model, able to predict better. So definitely, I think artificial intelligence can be used for project management. For example, based on certain data, you can predict whether project will fail or not, right? Based on the issue they have, based on probably the how long they take to respond to the issues. And you can come up with a lot of other measures, and I think, yeah, of course you can do that. But the only problems in the case of projects, we do not have rich enough database. So if you have, for example, in the organization that probably have thousands and thousands of projects, and they actually have all the information captured in their, for them, if they have that the digital project workspace, right? They will capture this. Yeah, I think you can do some kind of AI, and the system will be able to go through the data and then be able to come up with certain prediction. So that is why the very reason why I mentioned that unfortunately a lot of organizations don't use digital project management. So a lot of these projects are actually done manually. So I used to, when I did one training, one of the big, one of the top, I would say 5 institution in Malaysia. I said that, how long you been around? And they said that we've been around for the last, 40 years. Okay, how many projects you've run? They say probably run thousands of projects. Okay, where are the data of these projects? And they said that they were struggling to answer that. So basically the answer is no, we don't have any data on it because everything was done manually. And when the project finished, the vendor takes the data away with them. Yeah, so to the long story, the short answer is yes, it can be done when you have the data. Raja, you want to add?
Yeah, I think I can add a slightly different perspective. I'm not going to talk about artificial intelligence, but basically just the use of technology in running a project. Jailani's book actually spends a lot of time, maybe 50% of the time, talking about how you could use digital technology to make life easier and to deliver a successful project. And that's a very, very critical part of the book. However, the other 50% has got nothing to do with technology. It's about good practices. And if you combine the two things, good practices and the use of digital technology, then you have a very smooth landing. And so I want to point out that even though you use artificial intelligence or the most state-of-the-art digital technology, all of that actually relies on good human procedures. And so without the other 50%, which is people doing the right thing, then you are not going to get a smooth landing. And maybe I can give an example if there's a little bit of time. One of the characteristics of a well-run project is the ability to handle problems or how you handle problems. Because those of us who have run projects, we know that every day when you're running a project, there are lots of problems, right? Every day brings new problems. So the idea about a good project management team is not that you avoid problems, but how you actually deal with the problem, right? Now that has nothing to do with technology. It's a human behavior to say that if you don't have a good way of dealing with and managing the resolution of project problems, then whatever technology you use, it's not going to actually help you. So 50% of the book is to actually focus on that. And so we shouldn't lose sight of that point. So a good project manager knows how to handle problems and resolve them quickly. In fact, one project, when I was a junior person, I worked on a project, and the CEO of the company who commissioned this project, he had a rule. He said, any problem that is surfaced in the project and recorded in our problem resolution system, it must be solved within 1 week. And if the project team can't solve it in 1 week, then I will solve it. And so this is nothing to do with technology. It's the other 50% that we're talking about, which is the combination of good human procedures together with the latest in technology, which will give you that smooth landing.
Just to add on that, Raja, I think in the book we talk about the code of practice. Which is kind of another way to explain what I just said is about it's not just having technology alone is not going to be enough, and that's why a lot of companies who implemented some kind of project management system fail because that practice is not established, right? So they don't have to establish a process of how you do risk issue escalation, how long the issue has been resolved, and that kind of stuff. So once the system has not governed by the right core practice, most likely the system will fail. So which is what happened to many organizations. Okay, is that okay?
All right, yeah. Let's move on to the next question. Hi, Mr. Jailani, specifically for you, yeah. Do you think the best attributes for a project manager is to communicate actively with project team members and involve heavily in the project planning? based on your experience, what are the main contributors to failure as project manager?
Obviously, communications are definitely very key. I mean, project. In fact, that is also mentioned in the book, right? A good project manager has to be a good communicator. In fact, when I use the word communicator, it's not just about one-way communication, right? It should be two ways, right? You need to also walk the corridor and talk to the team, understand their problems, right? So one of the one of the reason for, sorry, can you read again, Farrah? What are the reason for?
So what is the reason for a project manager to fail?
Okay, yeah.
In the project,
so
if they're
yeah.
too involved in the project.
Yeah, okay. So one is, that means it's going to be the reverse of the attributes of a good project manager, right? So to be a good project manager, for example, you need to have you need to be on top of things. You need to know what's going on in the projects. You need to know what issues you have, what risks you have, and how to mitigate those risks and how to resolve those issues. So one of the problems that a weak project manager, he is not, or she is not on top of the issues. They don't know what's the status of the project, and it does not know what are the issues, doesn't know what are the risks and how to mitigate them. So of course, there's few other reasons as well, and have lack of clarity of how to execute the project end to end. I've been to projects where the project manager only know what to do in the current stage or in the current phase, and doesn't even know what to do when, for example, he or she is in the design stage. You see, so but he has not thought through what's going to be done in the build stage. For example, am I going to use the offshore development team? I'm going to do the development on site. So a lot of those things are not thought through upfront. So that's one of the reasons that lead to project failure, because project managers do not have all this a good whole of the methodology. Of course, are not on top of things. Obviously, having a project manager who are not good in communications, or probably, again, right, come up with processes, irresponsible in coming up with practices that cause the project team to waste a lot of time, can also lead to erosion of project team's morale, and can eventually lead to project failure, or in the worst, in other situation, will be what I call a hard landing situation.
All right. Okay. So let's go on to a few more. Quite overwhelming. We have several questions more to go. Okay, so let's move a bit. What motivated you to actually write this book? And will there be a second book? I'm combining the questions right now.
Okay. So
from two different people. Yeah.
So okay, that's a very good question. So okay, it took 5 years to write this book. So I was.
Oh wow, 5 years.
Yeah, I was lucky because Raja keep on encouraging me to finish it. Right. So after the first year, I kind of say it's too hard, because as consultant, we are good in coming up with PowerPoints, but writing a book is a completely different ball game altogether. It is very, but it's a very interesting process. So why I want to have this book is because of, I think I want to convey the same message that I mentioned earlier, the importance of project management discipline that many organizations overlook. They take it lightly. And sometimes they just put a few people in the PMO team, or they just grab one guy that they call project manager and expect this person to go and manage and deliver their projects. But it's not as simple as that, right? As you can see, as I mentioned in the book, in project, there's so many moving parts, there's so many areas, and you need to make sure that each of those areas are done properly. Even simple things like making sure you have a project schedule. I currently run a project, very huge project, that into tens and tens of millions of US dollars. You know what? There's no integrated project schedule. So this is very, very things that makes me that kind of disturb me, and I think I need to convey the message that project management is very important two senior management team who always think big. They always think about the vision, but they never spend enough time thinking about how to execute them. Of course, the other thing is back to the second group of people that I have in mind. I look at the people who are involved in project that are spending midnight and really, working, round the clock. And if you look at what exactly they are doing, are they trying to come up with new project strategy, or is it because they're trying to solve some design problem? Maybe it is acceptable because you need, if you require you to do that, it's fine. But many of them, they are not doing that. They are actually doing status report. They are, just like I mentioned just now, reconciling files that have been updated by various people, or trying to look for information that is not stored in the database. So all those things that actually cause them to be very unproductive and then encroach into their private time. So I think that they are, if they were to apply some of the practices that I mentioned, if they were to apply digital project management properly, they would not have ended up in that situation.
Okay. So will there be a second book?
Oh, will there be a second book? Yeah, I think so. Definitely, because I can see that some of this I can see after getting some of the feedback. I realize some of the messages probably need to be better written. They can be written better. And there are some topics that probably I would like to insert more on the few areas which I think we can add. But I don't know when yet. But we will continue. It is a journey. It is not. It's not an endpoint. It is a process. Whatever I mentioned in the book is not the only practices, right? I'm sure there's a lot of other good practices that people do out there, and I like to learn about them and incorporate those practices in the next release. Yeah.
Okay. So maybe one last question. Yeah, Ken, Mr. Jai and Mr. Raja. So I'm just going to combine these two questions. I think they're correlated. How to rescue hard landing and crash and burn projects effectively? Projects that have been damaged. That's the number one. And number two, how to ensure the selected method is suitable or fit within the nature of the project?
Raja, I think that question is for you.
Okay.
Raja, are you okay? Oh, you need to go.
Sure. I'll do my best. What was the first question again? So
how to rescue a hard landing and crash and burn projects effectively? Pretty much damaged project. Can it still be saved?
Sure. I have some experiences of being asked to rescue a project several times in my career with Accenture. Somebody else started the project. It got into a problem, and then I was asked to go in and rescue it. So I think there are probably three, if you are thinking about rescuing a project that has gone wrong or that is headed for a crash and burn, there are probably three things that you need to do depending on the circumstances. The first one is that you have to go back to basics and talk to the project owner and find out what are the few most important things they want to achieve from a business point of view. Because the project may have started out saying that we want to achieve 10 different things, right? We want to have 10 different business outcomes. But that's probably no longer possible because you are in a bad situation already. So the first thing you got to do is find out what are out of the 10 things they originally wanted to do, what are the 5 most important things they want to really do, and what can you ignore or leave for another time. So you have to go back to basics and find out what's the most important things that you need to focus in order to get this project out of a crash and burn. So that's probably the first thing I would do if I was looking at a project. Talk to the business owner and find out what's really important and what's nice to have that I can ignore for a later time. The second thing is that you need to probably do a re-estimate. Once you know what you need to do, what are the 3 or 4 most important things you actually need to achieve, to rescue this project to some measure of success, you probably have to re-estimate the entire remaining project to see what is the effort and skills that you need in order to do those 3 or 4 things that you have agreed with the project owner that you're going to do, right? And then finally, the last thing that you would probably have to do is talk to not the project management people or the most senior people on the project, because presumably you've already done that. You need to go and talk to the grassroots people and find out what actually went wrong. And my former boss, whom I learned a lot from, he used to call this process touching the grassroots, right? He said, if you really want to know what's going on and how something went wrong, there's no point talking to the project management. You need to go and talk to the most junior people on the project team, project team members as well as clients, and they will tell you what's really happening, right? So those are probably the 3 things that I would focus on in order to rescue a project.
If I can add, Raja, I think touch the grass is mentioned a couple of times in the book. Thanks for that input, Raja. I think for in addition to what Raja just mentioned, which is probably I would definitely do those things. Again, right, it's also about sometimes a lot of these potentially crash and burn projects. They just do not have, I mean, I might be saying the same thing over again. They just do not have the right information to decide. That's because they don't even know whether they are, how far behind schedule they are, what exactly is behind schedule, what exactly the issues that they need to have, and how serious is the issue and how to resolve it. They just simply don't have it. I remember when I used to run a project, and the QA was Raja, right? So the first thing that Raja asked from me, where is your program issue register? That if you don't have it, don't come and see me. And some projects don't even have that. They just discuss problem in emails, they WhatsApp, they talk everything, but nobody document those issues. And sometimes you don't even know what issue you have and what you need to do. So these are some of the basic stuff. That's why having the visibility of the project, knowing where are you in the schedule, what are your issues, what are your risks, very important. And so that you know at any time what to do in responding to that. So just imagine when you're flying a plane, you have all these indicators. You can see your fuel levels, you can see your speed, your altitude, all the stuff. So as a project manager, you need to have all those measures. You need to know where are you so that you know whether you're in trouble or not, and you can do something about it. So definitely, I always insist that digital project management is almost a must unless you are running a project that only have you as the only team member. So if you have, few people working in different places, you need to have some kind of system to help you manage your project.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Jailani and Mr. Raja. I guess that's about it. It's almost 4 p.m. now. So thank you so much for everyone that's participating and engaging in our Q&A sessions. I hope everyone benefited from this, and do not forget to get the book at your nearest store and soon e-book on Amazon Kindle. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye till the next time.
Thank you. Thank you, Farrah.
Thank you. Thank you.